Hello everyone and welcome to AquaDream. Today we are going to talk about plants with CO2 and without CO2, and we are going to compare them. A lot of people ask, do plants really look that different with and without CO2? The answer is yes, and today I'll show you. I'll compare the same species of plants grown in CO2 injected tanks and in tanks without CO2. You'll see how their appearance changes in color, size, shape and growth speed. And I'll explain why sometimes plants without CO2 can actually look more natural and even more beautiful. So let's dive in. So why CO2 matters for plants? Plants need three things to grow. As you know, it's light, nutrients and carbon dioxide. In tanks without CO2 injection, plants survive only what's naturally available, from surface exchange and fish breathing. Without CO2 injection, plants get a lot more carbon, which speeds everything up, growth, color and their size. But speed isn't always beauty, and I will prove it to you today, so let's compare. And the first comparison, we will start with this super red Ludwigia palustris. I have that Ludwigia super red in my high-tech cube tank, which is this one. But I don't have that Ludwigia super red in my low-tech tanks submersed. Before I tried to keep it in my low-tech tank, and if you are planning to have that red palustris Ludwigia as submersed form in your low-tech tank with no CO2, you can expect it to grow red and beautiful for the first time. I would say up to 6 months in your new tank. It will grow beautifully as there will be a lot of nutrients and naturally dissolved CO2 available for this plant. But over time this plant will lose its beautiful appearance and will stop growing, and after a few trimmings it will also stop recovering after the trim, since this plant is a high CO2 level demanding plant. So I would recommend to use the Ludwigia Super Red only in your tank with CO2 injection. But today I want to show it to you and compare this plant in submersed form with CO2 and the same plant in its immersed form with no CO2, because it can grow beautifully in its immersed form as well. So first let's take a look at its submersed form in this tank with CO2. And as you can see, it grows just super beautifully. It is super red. Of course, here I'm also using the fertilizers. Plants are growing very fast here, and this Ludwigia also needs a trimming almost every week or every 2 weeks, and it is easily regrow and recover after each trimming because it does have all the CO2 and nutrients available for that. And just look at all of this growth. Look at all of that big growth, healthy, red, colorful Ludwigia here. So in the tank with CO2 it grows taller. If I don't trim it here for 2 weeks, it even start growing out of the tank. It is also grow much bushier with CO2. You can see that it is almost covered all the surface of the tank, and it is also covering the light for other plants and also for Rotala, which is next to these plants. So Rotala doesn't grow really much because it doesn't have enough light, and Ludwigia takes over everything, but it looks beautiful. Even I use a very cheap light here, a very budget one, and it's only 14 baht. So the power of this light is just enough for Ludwigia to feel happy and grow super red like this. And yes, as I said previously, you cannot expect that super red Ludwigia to grow in your low-tech tank as red as you can see it here. And also without high level of CO2, over time the Ludwigia super red in the low-tech tank will lose its leaves, almost all the leaves from the bottom, and will only have leaves at the top. So as the result, it won't look really attractive in your low-tech tank. So if you do not consider using CO2, just remember that Ludwigia Super Red is not a good choice. But if you look at the same species of Ludwigia here in my low-tech tank with no CO2 and even with no filter, it's kind of paludarium. I built it a very long time ago, and Ludwigia here still grows very well. I do not use any fertilizer here and no CO2 injection. And as you can see, this Ludwigia here is in its immersed form, and it loves to grow out of the tank. And look at the look of the Ludwigia here. It looks slimmer, it looks greener, because the CO2 is not as much available from the air as the pressurized CO2, and it looks more delicate. I actually really like Ludwigia in its immersed form. And look at the leaves. The leaves are so shimmery. They look like they are made of plastic, but it is actually the real plant. It looks just amazing. So if you are considering using Ludwigia in your low-tech tank with no CO2, you can only expect it to grow in its immersed form. And you can see some of the leaves are submersed and they are only green. There are no red leaves in its submersed form, and it doesn't really look nice submersed. But the closer it comes to the light source, the more red it becomes, but not as red as you saw previously in my high-tech tank. With no CO2, it gives that Ludwigia a softer look, more natural stream look. And for the next comparison, we are going to compare the carpet plants, specifically Monte Carlo and Eleocharis. I only have Eleocharis in my high-tech tank and in my low-tech tank as well, but Monte Carlo I only have in my low-tech tanks with no CO2. This is my Iwagumi high-tech tank with pressurized CO2 and fertilizers, and here I have the mix of Eleocharis and Helanthium tinellum grass. At the beginning I planted Monte Carlo together with hair grass here, but because the light here probably wasn't strong enough for the Monte Carlo to develop quickly, the Eleocharis, the hair grass, took over all the tank, and eventually the Monte Carlo didn't grow. So now the dominant plants here are Eleocharis hairgrass and Helanthium tinellum. And hairgrass with CO2 injection, of course, will grow much faster, much thicker and bushier in your tank. It will create a fast and flat carpet, but in the tank with no CO2, the growth will be much slower, much thinner, and the hairgrass might look much taller and actually the middle-like. But here you can see in the high-tech tank, it grows much thicker and the look is much fresher and greener, because actually Eleocharis hairgrass is a high CO2 demanding plant. So if you want to expect it to grow fast and be thick and bushier, creating a nice green fresh carpet, of course the only option is to have the pressurized CO2 in your tank. But to grow hairgrass in the low-tech tank is also possible, and I'm going to prove it to you. And that is my 17 centimeters shrimp bowl tank, a very small ecosystem with no CO2 and no filter. And here I have the Monte Carlo and hairgrass. This tank is almost 2 years old, and the hairgrass from the beginning looked much greener and fresher because it had much more nutrients available and also the naturally dissolved CO2. And because in the small ecosystem the CO2 level is much more available for this high CO2 demanding plant as hairgrass and Monte Carlo, so it is possible to grow it here. In the bigger low-tech tanks you would probably struggle growing hairgrass or Monte Carlo, only in a small ecosystems like this. And you can see that the hairgrass does grow here. It does look not as fresh as it was the first year, but it's still fine. It's still showing some growth, but slow growth. And it is not as green and thick over time as you saw previously in the high-tech tank. But just to compare, I'm gonna show you that hairgrass in this tank. This tank is actually young. It's 4 months old, and you can see that the hairgrass here looks much healthier, much greener. This tank also does not have CO2 and filter, and as I said previously, you can expect the growth of hairgrass in the small ecosystem, but only, I would say, the first year it will look attractive, and then it will lose its look but still grow. And hairgrass with no CO2 doesn't spread over the tank as it does in high-tech tank. So all the bushes I planted here stay the same size, and it doesn't really spread much, just a little bit and very slow. Now let's take a look at this small ecosystem, also the bowl tank with no filter, no CO2, no fertilizers, and here I grow the Monte Carlo. This moss here started growing. I didn't remove it, but actually I have to trim it because it does cover the Monte Carlo from the light. But I'm going to try to show you the Monte Carlo carpet as close as I can. I only have Monte Carlo in my low-tech tanks, and actually the Monte Carlo is possible to grow in small ecosystems, and it actually does grow very well in tanks with no filter, because as I said before, in small ecosystems the CO2, the naturally dissolved CO2 is much more available for the carpet plant to grow, and actually Monte Carlo is not as high demanding CO2 plant as hairgrass. And you can see you can have a nice carpet of Monte Carlo here with no CO2. But of course, to grow these plants, you need the nutritious substrate. You need to provide the nutrients and the right light to grow this plant. This tank is also almost 2 years old, and the Monte Carlo still looks fine, looks healthy, not as green, as thick and perfect carpet as you can see in high-tech tanks, but considering that this tank does not have CO2, fertilizers and filter, I think it does pretty well. And let's come back to this cubic. It's 25 centimeters by 25, as I showed you with hairgrass before, and I also grow the Monte Carlo here. This tank is also does not have any CO2, filter and fertilizers. but it does have the nutritious substrate, and the Monte Carlo is pretty happy here. There are some gaps where the old Monte Carlo didn't want to recover and grow, but it does covering the surface with the new growth, which I'm happy about. I recently trimmed the old stems to speed up the new growth, so let's see how it goes in the future. You can see the new growth is here. Of course, it will take about 3 to 4 months for the Monte Carlo to grow, to spread over your tank, because with no CO2 everything takes time, so you have to be very patient with that. And the next comparison will be the rhizome plants like Anubias, bucephalandra and Java fern. And we are going to start with this Riboku style tank. This is the high-tech tank with pressurized CO2, and I'm going to show you the bucephalandra and Anubias in this tank first, and then we are going to move to my low-tech tanks with the same plants to compare. So with CO2, these plants just a bit faster growth. They're showing faster growth. They are actually slow growers, but with the pressurized CO2, they grow faster and their roots are much longer. And I would say the bucephalandra in high-tech tanks looks much more beautiful. So the bucephalandra in this high-tech tank definitely grows faster. And I would say the colors are much more beautiful. It is much more browny and red color, and the leaves are much more shiny. I really like the color of bucephalandra with CO2. Here is the species of brownie bucephalandra. I also have another one right there. That's another species of bucephalandra. It's a green color bucephalandra. And to be honest, I don't see really much difference between that species of bucephalandra in tanks with CO2 and without CO2. I also have Anubias nanopetit here, and I did notice faster growth with CO2. But regarding the look, to be honest, I really like the look of Anubias nanopetit in low-tech tanks, especially in its immersed form, and I'm going to show it to you now. But before I move to my low-tech tank, to compare, I want to show you the Anubias in this high-tech cube with CO2, and I would say it doesn't really look healthy here. I think, well, the new leaves appeared recently, and you can see they're fresh and light green color, but the old leaves don't really look healthy. Maybe this is because I sometimes skip adding fertilizers. Maybe it is because, as you remember, in this tank I use a not really powerful light, and all the light is covered by Ludwigia here. Even Anubias is not a high light demanding plant. I think it might be also the reason of it. Or maybe I should trim all the old leaves to speed up the new growth, so it does look better. But again, I really like the look of Anubias in my low-tech tanks. Let's go and see. And first I want to show you the same species of Anubias nanopetit here in my shallow tank, where most of the plants are in its immersed form, and I'm so happy with this plant here. This tank is 2 years old, and you can see how beautifully this Anubias in its immersed form grows here. Here you can see that it is covering all the surface on the piece of wood, and it does grow pretty fast here by taking the CO2 from the air. Looks so fresh, so green, all the leaves are here, looks so healthy, much better than its submerged form with CO2. Look at these healthy plants. I almost never see any bad leaves here that I need to remove. It's just so beautiful, growing immersed, with all the roots submerged near the water, and the piece of wood is always wet, so it keeps that moisture for the Anubias to not dry out. Beautiful. Here is another example of Bucephalandra in this low-tech tank with no CO2, and you can see that the color is more greeny. It is not as shimmer leaves as with pressurized CO2, but still looks very beautiful, so natural. I really like the look of it here. These plants like Anubias and Bucephalandra actually shine without CO2 because slow growth keeps algae down. And with no CO2, Anubias and Bucephalandra still look so healthy, but just slower growth. I also have Anubias nanoPetite over there, but it's covered in the dark. Cannot really catch with the camera, but I'm going to show you another Anubias example in the low-tech tank. And this is my big cube low-tech tank with no CO2, and all the plants I used here are usually all the hardy plants which I usually use for all my low-tech tanks. They are not high level of CO2 demanding plants, and here I want to show you that Anubias, and you can see Anubias in its submerged form with no CO2 looks really good. The leaves are much bigger actually here, but still healthy and green, and I really like the look of the Anubias with no CO2. Of course, it does need CO2, but for the Anubias, the naturally dissolved CO2 is enough for its growth. The growth is just slower. You can see this bush over there as well. It actually grows with no CO2, it actually grows higher to the top. It doesn't spread wider, but it grows upper. I also have Bucephalandra in this tank behind where not much light, but Bucephalandra does not need high light, and you can see it does also look healthy. The new leaf appears over there, is just much slower. It is not as colorful as with CO2, but still looks very natural. And here, this is my big bowl with no filter, with no CO2, and the growth here is very nice. You can see that the Bucephalandra and Anubias feel really good, and look how beautifully the Bucephalandra look here. It does actually spread slower than in tanks with CO2, but still it is spreading and the leaves are healthy. It looks much more natural. I really enjoy more the look of Bucephalandra and Anubias in my low-tech tanks than in high-tech tanks. Another example of Anubias and Bucephalandra in this low-tech cube. It's pretty old. This cube is 2.5 years, I think, and still you can see that still Anubias and Bucephalandra over there looks just super cool. Look at the Bucephalandra. Looks so nice. It does grow very slow over time, but still some of the leaves are old. I might trim them, but you know, I have so many tanks, not always have time to really take a good care of every tank, but what I always do is changing water on time, of course. Now let's talk about unique plants. I don't really use very rare and unique plants even for my high-tech tanks, since I'm using tap water, and tap water is a bit harder than the RO water. I cannot really grow the rare and unique plants even in my high-tech tanks, and I will show you the example. I tried to grow the Hygrophila pinnatifida submersed in this tank and that one, and it didn't grow, I think, because of the tap water and the hardness of water. But look at Hygrophila pinnatifida in its immersed form. Doesn't it look beautiful? I think it's amazing. So if you are planning to grow Hygrophila pinnatifida in its immersed form, you can definitely do it. I'm not sure if it will grow immersed in the low-tech tank with no CO2, but probably it will grow as well. I only have the example of that Hygrophila in my high-tech tank, and I also have it growing right here, and it grows higher every week, so probably soon I will have to cut it and just place it near to continue growing. And the next plant comparison will be the Helanthium tinellum, the pygmy chainswort, one of my favorite plants, which does work for both high-tech tanks, of course, and for low-tech tanks as well. And I often use this plant in my low-tech tanks. And this plant is very beneficial for your aquarium. It is here. You can see in that high-tech tank, you can see the bush over here and everywhere in the front. With CO2, it spreads very quickly, and even without CO2, it does grow fast, which is very beneficial for your low-tech tank, especially in the cycling process. And it does create that dense grass-like carpet here. You can see it right here. And it does have that very nice natural look. And what I noticed with CO2, it has more reddish color. The leaves are more red, and actually it is growing much taller. For example, that big bush that I planted here grows pretty high, but it is in the middle of the tank, so it does not disturb the overall look, which I'm happy with. But it does grow smaller in the front here. So in case of Helanthium tinellum, I don't really see much difference between CO2 and no CO2. Only, I would say, in color, it is more dark green and reddish color with CO2. And let's take a look at the same plant in the tank with no CO2. And Helanthium tinellum, I grow almost in every my low-tech tank. And here you can see it does grow pretty the same. Also, some of the bushes are longer, some of the spreads become shorter. Here it does not have as bright color as in tanks with CO2, but still it does spread pretty fast and it looks very natural, very nice. It does not really require the high level of CO2, but it does need the nutritious substrate. I also grow it here in my low-tech small ecosystem, small bowl tank, and it looks so beautiful here. It covered all the foreground, creating that natural jungle look. Really like it. Looks so well. I only use the 5-watt lamp here and only nutritious substrate, no filter, no fertilizers. And that Helanthium tinellum I also have in this bowl tank with no CO2, and it does grow. Even this tank is very old, almost 3 years. It still looks here pretty nice and still grows. Still not demanding a lot of nutrients and CO2. Actually, here is another example of Bucephalandra. Even this tank is very old. You can see that Bucephalandra is still looking pretty nice here. The Anubis nonapetite is behind there as well. So these plants are slow growers. They don't need the high level of CO2 to grow fast. Still can look pretty and natural. And the next two plants are really good comparison because they look really different in tanks with CO2 and without CO2. And I really love their look in low-tech tanks with no CO2, and I'm going to show it to you. So this tank is my Rhizome high-tech tank, and these two plants are Cryptocoryne venti and Cryptocoryne becketi, and they look completely different in CO2 tanks. With CO2 they become bigger with broader leaves and sometimes with more vibrant colors. Also the leaves are much taller and the runners are faster. And you can see the Cryptocoryne becketi is right here. It is very tall in this tank. Before I used that Cryptocoryne only in my low-tech tanks, and you will see the difference very soon, but I did not expect it to grow so tall in this tank. Also behind there you can see the Cryptocoryne venti green over there, also grows very tall. The leaves are much bigger over there. I'm going to show you from the top. You can see here the Cryptocoryne becketi and Cryptocoryne venti green. They almost touches the surface. They grow so tall here and the leaves are just huge. So my idea was to plant it behind as tall background plants, and actually that was a very good idea because they create that really natural background look. There is also another species of Cryptocoryne, Cryptocoryne lucens. You can see it here, and it also really different in tanks with CO2. It grows much taller and the leaves become browny and reddish color. And it also grows into a large mid-ground bush like this. So I planted it in the middle, and it also touches the surface but also creating that natural background look. So if you use these plants, this species of Cryptocoryne in your high-tech tank, expect it to be pretty big and tall, so you can use them only for the background. But here guys, this is my big low-tech cube with no CO2, and look at the Cryptocoryne venti, the same Cryptocoryne species, and Cryptocoryne becketi. Look at them, they look completely different. They are much shorter, the color is more natural, like a very juicy green color for venti. And look at the Cryptocoryne becketi, it is so short. It is actually like a foreground plant, not like a tall background plant. And the leaves are also reddish browny color, and they are very shimmery. I really enjoy the look of these two plants in the low-tech tank. Without CO2 they are really smaller. The tighter rosettes here with the softer green brown tone, they stay compact, creating the natural clusters, which is really nice. You can also see that becketi Cryptocoryne over here and here. Look at that shimmery, browny, nice, really nice leaves here. They're so shimmery. And look at this really greeny and bushy Cryptocoryne venti here. Looks so much shorter. The leaves are much thinner here. Looks so natural and really nice. Can you imagine if I would plant this Cryptocoryne and it would grow as high as in tank with CO2? The overall look of this aquarium would be completely different, and this plant would not match the style and the overall scape look. But with no CO2 it does look really balanced as the mid-ground plant. The Cryptocoryne becketi is also growing there, creating that reddish browny spots in the tank. So I actually love much more the look of these Cryptocorynes in this tank. Look at this, amazing. Cryptocorynes are very beneficial plants for your low-tech tank. I highly recommend you to always use one or two species of Cryptocoryne in your low-tech tank, especially in your filterless tank, because it does have very strong root system. It helps to stabilize the overall ecosystem, oxygenate the substrate, and it's very hardy plant. and it is not demanding plant at all. And here let's take a look at Cryptocoryne lucens, which I showed you previously in my high-tech tank, which was taller and reddish browny color, but here in this low-tech bowl with no CO2, it looks just green and not as tall as in tank with CO2, and still looks very fresh, healthy and really nice. And for the next comparison, I want to show you the Vallisneria nana, which is actually covered the whole tank. This is the high-tech tank with CO2, and I really need to replace these runners to the background, not at the front, but I kind of like this look actually when it grows much shorter in the front. Maybe I will just keep it, I don't know, I haven't decided yet. But the Vallisneria nana is actually a hardy plant, it is not demanding plant. I have it both in my low-tech tanks and high-tech tank. But in case of CO2 tanks, I would say it does look much greener and much juicy. In case of the size, I don't see really much difference. It does grow faster with CO2, but it also fast growing plant in the low-tech tank. And I also recommend you to use this plant in your low-tech tank. Really beneficial, fast growing plant. And look at the same Vallisneria nana in this low-tech tank. I love the look of it here. I think it looks more natural, the more natural color here. It grows slower, but still quite fast. The leaves, I would say, thinner, and yeah, they have like a more delicate movement in water. I really like how it looks here. And it grows very well with no pressurized CO2 as well. And my shrimps here just love that Vallisneria nana. They love climbing on it and cleaning it from algae. Look at them. There are so many of them. They were just breeding recently, and I got much more shrimps in this tank. They love hiding it here. And this is another example of my low-tech tank. This is a 50 centimeters shallow tank with no CO2, and that must really need some trimming, which I will do soon. And here I also have the Cryptocoryne, Venti and Becchetti. You can see the reddish and brown color behind, and you can also notice the difference in size and the shape of the leaves with no CO2. So actually these Cryptocoryne Venti and Becchetti can be used as short plants for the background for your shallow tank as well. So it won't grow too high as in tanks with CO2. I love how Cryptocoryne Becchetti looks in tanks with no CO2. Its color is more reddish color, and I love that it grows short, so I can use it for mid-ground or background plants as for shallow tank. I did some mistake here when I built this aquarium, and the mistake is that I had to add more nutritious substrate, a higher level of nutritious substrate in this tank, because that Cryptocorynes need a deeper substrate because they have a very long root system. Which I did not provide for them. There are more sun than nutritious substrate, so it doesn't grow here as bushy as in my other tanks with higher nutritious substrate. But anyways, and also because I did not provide enough nutritious substrate here and it is not high enough, I also used Sagittaria here, and where you can see where the substrate is higher level at the back, the Sagittaria grows well and it feels good, but it started growing at the beginning here, but then it stopped growing, and well, there are some spots where I still have it, but
because there is no nutritious, it doesn't really grow just in the sand. So if you use Sagittaria or Cryptocoryne, just be sure that you have enough level of nutritious substrate for the roots to grow and for the nutritious to be available for these plants.
So guys, why plants look different without CO2? Well, the growth is slower, so they become with smaller leaves and with more balanced shapes. The colors are much more calmer, more green, less red color. The textures are more natural, closer to what you would see in the wild, in the nature. And also because of the stability of the tanks without CO2, slower tanks. The tanks without CO2 are much slower growers. So slower tanks are less demanding with fewer algae outbreaks. So no CO2 plants may not look competition style like you see on the internet often, but they have a charm that feels more natural. So let's talk about pros and cons for plant growth. So with CO2, you can expect a faster, dramatic growth, stronger red colors and rare plants possible. But the cons are high maintenance. You have to maintain these plants much more often, especially fast-growing plants. The higher cost of the tanks with CO2 and the much higher risk of algae. Without CO2, you can expect more natural proportions of plants. Slow, easy growth, less trimming, less maintenance for these tanks. As you know, most of my tanks are slow growers, low-tech tanks, and I don't trim anything in them, only one fast-growing per weed. And also tanks without CO2 are much more stable long-term tanks. The cons of low-tech tanks is the fever demanding species. You cannot use rare demanding plants in it, and of course less intense colors. So for me, while I enjoy high-tech tanks of course, but often prefer how plants look without CO2. Because they don't overwhelm the aquascape, they grow in harmony with rocks and wood, and they give me that calm, natural feeling like I'm looking into a real pond or a stream. So let's answer a question, which one for you? The tank with CO2 or without CO2? Plants CO2 or without CO2? Well, for the beginners, I would recommend start without CO2 to learn the balance. Hobbyists who want red plants or fast aquascapes, of course, go for CO2. For nature lovers, you will love no CO2 tanks for their slow and peaceful beauty. And remember, it is not about right or wrong, it's about what look and experience you enjoy. So plants with CO2 and without, both are beautiful, just different. CO2 creates that bold and dramatic look. No CO2 tanks create that soft and natural look. So which one do you prefer? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this comparison, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more aquarium content. So thanks for watching, and if you want to get the same materials and equipment I use personally for all my aquariums, check out the links to my AliExpress and Amazon storefronts in the description below. They ship worldwide, so you can easily set up your own tank with trusted gear. Also, for more regular updates, behind the scenes and short aquarium tips, make sure to follow me on my Instagram and TikTok page. And if you'd like the personal guidance with your aquarium, from planning and setup to solving algae problems and ongoing maintenance, I offer my coaching and consultation through paid subscriptions and my private Telegram chat. That way I can walk you through every step and help you to build the aquarium you've always wanted. All the links are in the description below. And I'll see you next time. Bye.